So welcome to our last Trad Reviews live before the Triduum and before our Easter break. I'd like to say it's well deserved, Alexander, but we've done a total of 4 episodes, so not like we've been burning the midnight oil or anything.
No, not quite.
So this is our first dual review in which we're going to be talking about a novel and a film. And just to share this hilariously with our watchers or listeners, I had no idea that you were interested in this book. So when I had thought, well, maybe he'll see the film, and I messaged you and I said, would you be interested? With a name like that has Hail Mary in the
Yeah.
title, and that is going to be very popular, might it be worth discussing?
Mhm.
And you said, oh, I already saw the movie. I already read the book. And what was funny to me was I needed you to sign off on it for me to go on my project, which
Uh-huh.
was I had bought the novel, I don't know, a month or 2 months before, thinking the movie was coming out later this year, that I would have more
Yeah.
time. No idea that it was actually coming out, in 8 days or something like this.
Yeah.
So, with you saying that, do you know what I proceeded to do? I proceeded to read the book, and then keep in mind, so I'm reading on my Kindle,
Uh-huh.
and there's a lot going on right now. You and I are getting ready to leave for a trip for Italy. There's that. We have lots of other things going on, trying to prepare for Holy Week, trying to get some reading and devotions in. So just poor planning on my part, or you could say trying to squeeze something into the last minute.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
exactly.
I'm driving to the movie theater for an
Finishing
11
the book.
o'clock showing, and I have the Kindle in
Oh
front
my
of me.
gosh.
Now, thankfully, it's a type of road where you're just kind of in a straightaway. I was in the slow lane. So I'm
Uh-huh.
just there. I'm trying to keep but I'm reading. I get to the movie theater about 15 minutes before, and I have 10 minutes left, it says in the Kindle. So I finish it. I finish the ending. I laugh. I then put it down. Keep in mind the battery was running down on my Kindle. So it said you have 4%,
Will we
3%.
finish it? Will we finish it? No.
So I had a little Project Hail Mary
Yeah.
moment
Yeah.
just in finishing the book. I not only
Oh,
finished the
that's
book
funny.
before I got there, and then I walked into the movie theater 5 minutes before the movie started. So a little meta analysis to get us started. But I have lots of thoughts. I know you have lots of thoughts. Do you think it's useful to maybe start this by referring to The Martian?
Probably. I mean, for me it's very it's an interesting comparison for a multitude of reasons because I loved the Martian movie and I thought about reading the book, but I was like, well, I know the plot, I know the story. Why do I really want to not waste time, but do I want to commit time to the book? Dot dot dot. Having seen Project Hail Mary and having read the book first, I can now say I need to read the book because there's so much in the book of Project Hail Mary that was not in the movie in the sense of being fleshed out the same. So I can see now there's a big value in doing that. In regards to the comparison of the Direct 2, I would say, well, you commented earlier today that it's essentially The Martian in space,
with
which
a buddy comedy.
with a with a buddy comedy. I was actually thinking about this earlier. You could almost say, being a '90s child, you could almost say a Pokemon comedy, if you will, because in a way,
Okay.
Rocky's like a Pokemon. Um, but Weir brings in accessibility to science, which I loved in the book. I think that carries over into the movie. You get this great glimpse of science and just the fun atmosphere of it. You have a middle school teacher who makes science fun, makes learning fun, and with the Martian, I felt the same way. With a lot of the science was made in a fun way, an accessible way. You didn't have to be too much of a nerd with it.
It's true. So my reflection on having gone back to read the novel of The Martian after having seen the film, and the film's easily one of my top 10 science fiction films ever. It's beautifully shot. The landscapes of Mars are beautiful. The contrast between the disco soundtrack, which is funny in its own right, but along with the scoring we have, so you have both sides of the story being told, both musically and you could say in dance mode. It is very much an example of the audience is not going to sit and read through this science. And the
Mhm.
screenwriters have to make decisions of how am I going to explain this, which takes 2.5 pages to explain in the text.
Mhm.
Audiences are not going to pay attention to that. And honestly,
Sure.
audiences are not intelligent enough, really. And I'm not saying the science is, you said it makes it accessible. It 100% does. But it means
Mhm.
I have to read through and think about it. Okay,
Mhm.
circumference here, measurement here, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Mhm.
So they shortcut that very well in The Martian, and I think here as well. Sometimes
Mhm.
with humor and sometimes by skipping things. So that's part of, if you really love figuring things out, and that's the line I take away from the end of um, The Martian with Matt Damon, is he's giving the address to the future astronauts, and he says, "You solve one problem, then you solve another problem, then you solve another problem, and then if you solve enough problems, you can get home."
Yeah.
And I see that very much, especially thinking about Holy Week in relation to our life on this earth. You do your duty, you do your duty, you do your duty, and if you keep doing your duty, maybe one day you'll get to heaven.
Yeah.
But it starts with Jewish just doing, or reflecting back on our episode on Saint Therese, doing the little way. And
Yeah.
so that ties directly into your natural job at work. In Mark Watney's case, it was to be an astronaut. In the case of Dr. Ryland Grace, I was it a little on the nose to have a character named Grace with Hail Mary in the title?
A little bit. A little
I
bit.
purposely didn't do any research on this because I wanted
Mhm.
to flesh it out with you and think through it with you.
Mhm. I mean, it's certainly fitting to have that name. I don't, I don't even know if I really, if it really hit me when I was reading the book, the name and the comparison like that. I don't. Is there anything with the name Ryland that means anything? I don't know. Um, it's very fitting that Grace completes the mission, and how, if you want to make a religious comparison, how Grace, what Grace does for us in the spiritual life. So, I mean, it's a fun name. It's certainly suiting.
But I think what's interesting is in both film adaptations,
Hmm.
there is an, despite we're going to science this and we don't need no god and we can do this ourselves, we're humans, we're awesome. What you see is a reliance on some kind of faith. So in The Martian, the wood of the cross is
Hmm.
necessary in order to create fire, in order to create oxygen, in order to grow.
Hmm.
And I thought, I don't know how much more on the nose you can get of Christ lends you from his cross what you need to survive. I thought,
Hmm.
and the character, the Matt Damon character, looks at the crucifix and says, I'm guessing you'll be okay with this. You know, that I'm carving up the part of the crucifix in order to save
Yeah.
myself. He says,
Yeah.
of course, our Lord would be okay with this. And here in this film, we see something that does not appear in the novel, which is the Strat character saying, God willing, when Dr. Grace's character basically is asking her, do you think this is going to work out? And she says, God willing. And you could see the surprise, says, you believe in God? Part of it, I think, has to do with her character. She's
Hmm.
this very hard nosed person, but I think part in the scientific community, we don't go in for any of that God business. And she says, it's better than the alternative. Now,
Hmm.
that is no great testament of faith,
Yeah.
but I thought it was interesting that, we're going to throw a little Pascal's wager here, 3/4 of the way through the end of the film, and with this character who is willing to sacrifice himself later because
Hmm.
he went through a journey to get there. So originally we have a coward, and we're in Holy Week, so it's appropriate to think about this. What happened to all the apostles when our Lord got arrested? They
Yeah.
fled. They did
Hmm.
not say, despite whatever they said, we're ready to die with you, we're going to go. Nope, they fled. So Dr. Grace does that here. We need you to serve on this mission to save humanity. I can't do it. He has to be chased down, sedated, and put drugs in his system so he would have temporary amnesia.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
No.
his
Well, I was,
journey starts with, I don't want to use the term betrayal. That's a bit much. You can't
mhm.
volunteer somebody for a suicide mission. But in the end, he chooses a near suicide mission to lay down his life for a friend.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
had to go through a journey of refusing the first opportunity to lay down his life for billions of friends or
Hmm.
strangers, to lay it down for one person who's not even from his species.
Yeah, no, it's a remarkable transformation in his character, and it's very, you know, it's very interesting. Like when you talk about Strand, how who knows if she ever thought about God in her life, but when faced with an existential crisis for the whole planet, maybe the gears started turning and she had more time to think about this as she went through it. As you said, it's not a great testament of faith to be doing this off of Pascal's wager, but at least you can see the cogs turning, and maybe in it would lead her to a true faith, a truer faith in the future. It's an amazing comparison as you make in the spiritual life, how to the apostles how they were cowards and then they laid down their life later on for our Lord. When, in a certain sense, Project Hail Mary brought about his courage and to show what was needed in that moment and the value of a life in general, not anyone that he knew back home, because he certainly had the same motivation to save his school children that he cared for deeply. You think about that compared with Rocky, certainly there would have been a similar level of motivation. But having gone through the various trials and tribulations that he and Rocky went through, for those who don't know, Rocky is the I don't want to give too much of a spoiler, but is
We're
well,
in
can you
straight.
give us
We're definitely in the middle of spoiler
okay.
territory. I
So
would.
Rocky is the name that he gives the alien that he meets on the journey, which was we can talk about this in a bit, but I really appreciate the way they handled the alien side of things. A different type than you're normally used to seeing in science fiction. No, green man, no
Yeah, well, it
humanoid.
reminded me of the aliens in Arrival in terms of
I don't think I've
how
seen that.
you I think you'd like that. Check that out.
All
But
right.
in terms of not being something, as you say, little green man.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know AMC? I think is giving you their little plush Iridians that you can get with your ticket or something like that.
Oh, okay.
Um, I think part of the challenge as a Christian in looking at the film is, in a sense, laughing about the premise that we have to go to these faraway places to make discoveries about ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
when the reality is the journey is always interior.
Mm-hmm.
And these strange creatures and these strange conditions, they could be found on Earth. All you have to do is go to the bottom of the ocean, and you
Yeah.
can find very strange creatures. You can go look at any part of our Earth, and we'll have creatures that are as strange as Iridians. Certainly. I think about the types of creatures. I don't want to use the term bacteria, but maybe they're slightly more muscular than that. But they live where the volcanic vents come up in the Earth's crust, and
Mm-hmm.
there's life there that's feeding off of the chemicals coming up from what's
Yeah.
inside. So you don't
Yeah.
have to go off to 12 light years away to go find that. There is life and discovery all around us. It's that there is an impatience, a frenetic intemperance within modern man that has to look out
Mm-hmm.
because we don't dare to look in. And that's
Was it?
that's the lesson there, that if you look at all these strange creatures, this is all available to us. And Iridian and other
Mhm.
is someone on the other side of the planet who maybe doesn't speak the same language as you do, or someone who's blind
Yeah.
or deaf, or if you're blind or you're deaf. There are many of our opportunities to meet quote unquote aliens and interact with them in a loving way here and now, but we choose to talk about the future instead.
Well, I mean, it's a very, I think, modern thing. I've heard numerous times people filling their lives with this and that. Constantly listening to music, um, projects. It's not because they can't sit with themselves because the thoughts start churning. And it's an interesting thought. How if you just sat with yourself and dealt with, even people that have, say, like depression or anxiety, if you just sit and deal with your issues, you're going to be able to quote unquote find yourself, as modern man would say. But it's an important element to have that silence in your life. I mean, it's an important part of the spiritual life to have those moments of contemplation, leisure, thought, to think about these things. You don't need to go 1,000 light years away to discover yourself, like
Mhm.
that. Or as you say, you have different cultural experiences here on Earth to garner different insights. We talked about this in a True Restoration episode we did a year or two ago about the value of travel. And I know Steven certainly has gained a lot from his travels, different insights and whatnot. So it's a good point how modern man is fascinated by, oh, is there an alien out in space? That's always the big thing. Is there an alien? Is there a cell? If this is a cell, this is mind blowing. But it's like, we're on Earth. We're surrounded by how many cells and everything. You got grass. You got little bacteria of volcanoes or whatever, how you were saying, in the ocean. And it's this fascination with as a fascination with the now in the but a disregard for the supernatural, which I think causes a big problem in people's lives. But it's
There's a massive contradiction at the center of
yeah,
the plot, which is if this is all random and it all created itself, who cares if we die?
yeah,
We're not going anywhere anyway afterwards. The
yeah.
sun is going to burn out at some point. The idea that, oh, well, we really care about the human race. Why?
It's
There's no
evolution, right?
explanation.
I mean, if
There's
there's
no
evolution,
explanation
that's
for it.
the
Maybe it's
answer.
our time to go.
Yeah.
So that idea, obviously science fiction, if you haven't heard me talk about it here or in other channels, is for those who are unfamiliar with it, because you might write it off as nerdy stuff for nerds. Okay, fine, guilty as charged. However, it's also a wonderful way to talk about the present using the future as a frame. So very clearly what they're talking about here is climate change and the ability of people to work together despite their differences, and for people to overcome mm, intelligence and military hurdles. So we saw this happen in The Martian, where the Chinese and the Russians and NASA all work together. Obviously, that would never happen. And we see that here too, that, oh, we're faced with an existential crisis as a species. So that would mean that we're all going to work together. And this one woman, once again, a woke agenda here, it has to be a woman leading us. At least I guess, Alexander, the consolation is she's white and potentially heterosexual. So, there's a limit to how much DEI we're
And she
exposed to
can
here.
and she can sing karaoke too.
And she can sing. You can sing. She's not bad in that way. And she's a German. She's very organized,
Mhm,
playing fully into the stereotypes. I'm there for that. But the idea of we are going to come together as a people because of climate change. Climate
mhm,
change will galvanize us. I feel it's very thinly veiled. I'm sorry. Temperatures on the earth changing, and that we as humans, we've got to come together to solve this problem. And it will
mhm,
seem like a big problem that we can't solve. So whether we are meant that or not, once again, I didn't look into it because I just wanted
mhm.
to perceive it as a reader, as a viewer, and see how that felt with you.
Sure. I mean, honestly, I didn't even pick up on that. I was just, and maybe that's me not diving too deep into the plot, just sitting back and enjoying it and not trying to find hidden motives in this. I mean, the critique is certainly valid that it could be a veiled attempt. We don't know if Weir made it that way. For me, it was just more of a fun adventure and just extracting some joy out of that. Even if it is a veiled attempt at climate change, it's the problem in the movie is so much more realistic in the sense of an actual problem than climate change. I think I can discard it from being too much of a veiled attempt.
For sure, for sure. And that's the thing is I'm not particularly bothered in that sense.
Hmm.
I know that we're going to get this. You can't go to a modern movie without something being thrown in.
Sure,
Uh,
sure,
and and that's how they've managed to poison adaptations of things that I would have been otherwise interested in by putting in
mm-hmm.
things that are objectionable, which we as Catholics can't watch, or just
Sure.
by DEIing it so much. So we even see this with Dune. So they not only sex changed one of the characters in Dune from a man to a woman, then they changed again to a different race. So we have a black
Yeah.
female on the film substituted for a white man in the book.
Hmm.
And the sort of tokenism, like we're doing it to do it. If
Hmm.
you do it too much, I will probably switch off.
Yeah.
But in that particular case in Dune, I was able to say, okay, if you want to go do this, Denis Villeneuve, I'll accept it. But
Hmm.
the rest of the film is done well enough. So I'm going to probably have that same issue with the Odyssey, in
Hmm.
which I think Helen in this adaptation is an Ethiopian novel, a
Hmm.
novel. She's an Ethiopian model. Now, this isn't to say that Ethiopians cannot be beautiful. There certainly are, and I think she's a beautiful woman. But the idea that Helen of Troy is African in the sense of what we consider now African, as opposed to what
Sure.
was at that time period. You had more lighter skinned. Nothing wrong with it in a screen adaptation, but in today's woke atmosphere, it was a bit much, right? But
Yeah.
I will probably see it unless there are any objectionable scenes. So
Sure.
the last Nolan movie that came out had objectionable scenes. So it's the first Christopher Nolan movie I didn't go see.
Mhm.
So I've got to do a little bit of research on this to find out if there would be. And that's
Mhm.
one of the things that we hope to do at Trad Reviews as well, is to give parents editorial notes on where the objections are, so that you can either edit the movie yourself at home if you want to watch it with your children, or avoid it entirely. So you
Mhm.
can't edit a movie that's still in wide release. But I
Mhm.
think, Alexander, I can safely say, and I lean on you as well,
Mhm.
having your married man sensibilities, but I did not feel that this would be problematic to watch. There was not anything explicit, whereas in the book there's a wouldn't even use the term explicit, but there's some inappropriate conversation
Yeah.
in the book that doesn't
Mhm.
come over onto the film, just because it was used for lame comic effect in the book. You wouldn't have missed anything. I don't know why we're engaged in it anyway,
Mhm.
but we don't really see. I think you allude to the fact that he's cycling through different AI voice choices, and
Mhm.
one of them is a more, you could say, seductive voice, but it
Mhm.
moves very quickly. So
It
if you
does.
were not paid, maybe 3 or 4 or 5 seconds there, but it's not anything
I mean, I
horrible.
probably wouldn't have even noticed that, except for I looked up on IMDb beforehand on the Parents Guide. Like if there was anything, that was the only thing that came up. So I was already primed to be like, okay, what's going to happen here? If I had not known that, I probably just would have gone by quickly.
Well,
I'm
and,
glad
and
that.
I'm glad that's part of why I leaned on you there, because I love the work. It's strange, all these Protestants have done in
Mhm.
cataloging a lot of these films. Is to our shame
Yeah.
as Catholics that we haven't done the same due diligence. But
Mhm.
it used to be the Legion of Decency would do that for us now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's a lot of DIY these days, and there's a lot of this. Part of why we do trad reviews is a need you've had and discovered yourself. You have a real passion for older films. Is
Mhm.
there really are a lot of great films out there, so you don't
Yeah.
have to go to the new stuff if
Yeah.
you want to see something useful.
Yeah,
So
indeed. Indeed. And maybe, in the future, maybe we can do some type of review on there's two products that I've used for modern films. This is getting way out in the weeds a little bit, but there's VidAngel and there's ClearPlay, that I've used to watch modern stuff to remove this stuff automatically. So maybe in the future we could talk about that. But yeah, I agree with the film. Only that one instance. That's the only thing that you could, I think, say is objectionable in terms of watchability. The book, obviously, that caveat that there is the I don't even, as you said, this kind of inappropriate comments being made
it's not
between
even,
the
I wouldn't even
characters.
say it's like an entire page, but it's basically just two scientists who are colleagues who then are just speaking about a relationship with each other in a
Hmm.
very flat way. And
Hmm.
great Dr. Grace is amused by this, but
Hmm.
it's nothing, it's nothing explicit. It's just inappropriate. It's just something
Yeah.
that it doesn't, the one page of it and the mildness of it doesn't mean that you can't watch the book. But this goes back to the question of how are things slipped in. And I was thinking about the production code and Bishop Sanborn talking about smooch time. And one time when we were watching Ben Hur together, we noted, he said, "Here comes a smooch," and I think the smooch was like 6 or 7 seconds or something like this. But this was already far beyond the production code. So Hollywood had dumped the production code, which had been developed by the church or in
Hmm.
conjunction with the church, and it was 3 seconds, normally speaking. And this is enough for you to show affection between two characters, but not get too involved in it. I think it's a good guide, a good rule of
Yeah.
thumb.
Yeah.
And a lot of people would try to subvert this.
Oh, really?
So, yeah, I'm thinking, for example, in Notorious by Hitchcock, which comes out in the 40s, there's a scene between Bergman and Cary Grant, and they're walking, but they kiss while they're walking, and so the kiss keeps being interrupted, but they take it up to 3 seconds, and then they walk a little bit more, and they kiss again, and it was just already you could see this pushing against authority.
Interesting.
You're going to restrict us. We're going to push the limits, and unfortunately, and it's a shameful because Hitchcock was Catholic himself. Strangely, practicing one, went to mass, pretty much until he
Interesting.
died, but he would still choose to explore some subversive themes in this way. And he'd always make a lot of sort of cutting remarks about marriage, sometimes joyfully, sometimes not, more,
Mm,
less appropriately. But we haven't talked at all about Rocky. So Rocky is our alien, our Iridian. And this is the thing that is so powerful here, Alexander, the power of friendship.
yeah.
Friendship that crosses lines of species, and friendship that in the end leaves us with an ambiguous ending. We
Yeah.
really don't know. We just know that there's no rush, there's no hurry, right?
Hmm. Yeah. No, I think, as I said earlier, it was one of my favorite parts of both book and movie, how it wasn't just a green little humanoid alien. It was essentially a rock spider, if you will. And I thought it was just so cleverly done. I loved in the book. This is one of the things that didn't really translate over into the movie, but the problem solving that went on in the book versus the movie, and one of them, I think in the book you got a greater feel for how he actually made his AI translator of what Rocky was saying, how he
Mm.
developed this communication device. I thought it was just so clever and so interesting to read the process being done. And in the movie, it kind of just happens really quickly. But yeah, I mean, just the friendship there between them, between two species that are trying to survive. Each of their home planets is getting destroyed by this bacteria, I guess is the way to describe it. That's eating the sun. But yeah, he goes out of his way. Rocky saves him. It's going to mean a longer time for him to get home, but he's going to save Grace. And then in response, when Grace realizes the problem, that on the homeward journey, he's like, I gotta turn around, I gotta go save Rocky, even though that means he's never getting home. So it's just a fascinating um, reciprocal friendship of each doing for each other.
And that was another plot change too, that in the film, Rocky says it's going to take me a little longer to get home.
Yeah.
You won't They don't build it out in the film talking about Iridian's lifespan, and that 6 years
Mhm.
for Rocky is, I don't know, 6 months to us in terms
Mhm.
of our lifespan. But in the book, Rocky's got a lot of fuel, so it doesn't hurt him at all to give the fuel to Grace. He
Yeah.
has extra fuel left over. But I thought it was interesting in the film, they couldn't explain all that, so what they said instead
Yeah.
was Rocky made a sacrifice for
Yeah.
for Grace, and Grace returned that, and that we see that it's a bit of a struggle. He
Yeah.
he said that there wasn't anyone for him there. He didn't develop a relationship. He didn't have kids, but he wanted to get back to his school kids potentially. And then of course we have the wonderful ending, both in the book and the film.
Yeah.
And this is a rule of literature, that the ending doesn't need to be expected, but it needs to be fitting.
Mhm.
So if you read an ending and you are confused as a reader, it means the author did a poor job. And I remember laughing, closing my Kindle shut, and just smiling and just thinking that is perfect.
Yeah.
So I won't say what the ending is, but it was a great ending, and one,
Absolutely.
as I say, that is ambiguous. We don't know, is Dr. Grace going to go back to Earth? Who knows? He's not in a rush.
He's not in a rush anymore. Yeah. No, it's a beautiful ending, very fitting, as you said, and just it's really just a beautiful tale overall. I really think it's something special. It's the book, definitely a top 10 science fiction book for myself. I mean, just you know, as I was saying, there's different elements that didn't translate over. You have the very beginning of the book when you have the robot arm trying to wake him up, and the process he goes through of trying to you know, first of all, wake up and then figure out where the heck he is. It kind of went by really quickly in the movie. I think he just wakes up and then just goes and climbs around and exploring. In the book is a much more drawn out process, and just
Yeah,
all
and
the different problem solving events in the book are just fantastic.
Yeah, if we're looking at a 500-page book, I think we get through the first 200 pages in about 30 minutes. And I
Mm.
think that's just necessitated by the medium.
Mhm.
We're doing this in a movie form, and being able to see those visuals, see that the planet named Adrian. Obviously, there's a
Yeah.
connection with Rocky there,
Yeah.
and just a beautiful, uh, beautiful planet. And I've alluded to this before that this is what's waiting for us. Eye has not seen, ear has not heard. If you
Yeah.
think that is a minimum to be able to
Yeah.
see planets like
Yeah.
that in the life to come. So I know that's not going to be an inducement necessarily to live a virtuous life, but I see it more as a reward on the other side of things. That obviously the main
Absolutely.
reward is serving our Lord and doing His will and conforming our lives to His will.
Mhm.
So, wrapping up lightning round, would I recommend the book or the film? How would I do so? So, I would say I I I might be biased here, but I would push people to maybe start with The Martian before I would do this. And this isn't ruling out that we would do a review on The Martian in the future, but I would watch the film of The Martian and see
Mhm.
how you feel about it. I think it's a fine film. I like it for a number of reasons. If you like the Martian film, you're almost certainly going to like the Project Hail Mary film. There's that same
Mhm.
sort of injection of humor and trying to play with the audience and tell them a lot of information in a short amount of time.
Mhm.
And if you really like both of the films, you can go back and read the books.
Boy, I would. Hmm. I feel like it's been a while since I've seen The Martian. I feel like Project Hail Mary is a little bit more lighthearted than The Martian, maybe. So I don't know that. I think you have to watch both films. Like I don't think that you can get away with not seeing both because they're just so wonderful. I would say I would almost say read the book before the movie with the caveats that we mentioned earlier. I I think seeing the movie is a reward for reading the book. Because you can't really appreciate, I don't think, at least for me, to see everything come to life was just so special. So reading the book first and then, here's this. It was like a reward.
I was reading the book in the car on the way, right? So I
Mhm.
certainly am on your team. But the reason why I did was I wanted to have a notion of the plot and the ending prior to the film so
Mhm.
that it's the same. The challenge I have is the more I watch the Lord of the Rings Peter Jackson version, the harder it is for me to read those novels without thinking about Ian McClellan or all of those people, Gimli as that character, Orlando Bloom as Legolas. Because I read the book enough prior, I don't have that imprinted on me as
Okay.
this is how it is. So I didn't picture Dr. Grace as Ryan Gosling at all. And to be fair, Ryan Gosling did a pretty interesting job overall. I have to give him some credit. I wouldn't have expected him to pull it off, but I think he did a pretty decent job.
Mhm.
And I like your rubric in the sense of it's a reward,
Yeah.
and that pushes more people to read. So
Yeah.
I'm all
Yeah.
for that.
Yeah.
Uh, for
Likewise.
those for those who are interested in doing more reading with us when we come back after Easter break, the first one will be Song of Bernadette, and then Alexander and I are going to start talking about books that have been covered on Catholic Book Club over the years. And if I remember, I'll go back in and add to the description where you can find. But if you go to amdgventures.org and you click on our businesses, you'll see Catholic Book Club and you can click on there. And if you'd like to read more Catholic books, but you just don't have anyone to keep you accountable, Catholic Book Club will help you with that. We read a book a
Indeed.
month and we'll start clicking through that soon. With the one that we did on St. Therese was actually the very first book we ever did for a Catholic Book Club, which started a couple years ago. So, uh, thank you for joining us. If you are watching this later after the live, please put comments in, and Alexander and I will do our best to reply to them as quickly as possible. But until then, we wish you a fruitful Holy Week and a blessed Easter, and God bless you.
Kill the show.